So, when your child is struggling at school, it can be really hard as a parent to connect with others or to let them know you need help. Sharing what is going on for your child or your family, well, it can leave us feeling really vulnerable. We know that everyone is working hard, school, parents, and our kids, but how can we ensure we all are working together to support this incredible young person? We know recognizing the strengths in our children and family is a great way to start. Welcome. My name is Victoria Kedis. I'm a mom. I'm a manager and facilitator here at Family Smart. And I'm joined today by another incredible person, an incredible educator, and I'll let him introduce himself to joining this conversation with me today.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ashley Ragoonaden. I'm the proud principal of École Kalo Middle School in School District 23 in Kelowna.
Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. It's incredible to have a educator come into this conversation. I see so much caring and I witness so much hard work that educators do, so it's nice to have you with us today. So we know that oftentimes when a child is struggling with their mental health, it can be really hard to look and see what is going well with our kid and see their strengths. How, as an educator, do you see their strengths?
I think the first thing is, when we're working with adolescents and young people, is to get to know them, and that's about building trust. That's the word I think that comes back quite a bit in our schools. How do we build trust with these young people? And it's because trust connects us is the real connection to a positive relationship. So I think that's the first step, and we build trust by listening. And when we listen and we seek to understand before being understood, we allow students to be vulnerable and to explain to us, these are our needs and this is what I'm good at and this is how I learn. And that takes a little bit of time, because when they're young, they don't always know how to answer those questions. Like, we have an adult brain, so we're able to understand a little bit more about the cognitive aspects of learning, and also the social emotional components of learning. So it's important for us to take the time to listen to the students and find out not only how they learn, but what is their definition of success. And what are the things that they would like to achieve, and through that, make sure that we're understanding, and that we're using the language that they understand. So it has a lot to do with building trust, positive relationships, and using the right language with them. And then from there, as they grow, they'll be able to answer and explain to us what are their interests, what are they good at, and of course that's the definition of what their strengths are. And let's build a program around their strengths.
Beautiful. And I appreciate so much that you're asking them what they
Yes.
feel success looks like, and not just our own version of what we think that looks like for them. So already a place of starting from strength. Now, many families can feel overwhelmed with the difficulties their children are facing, and they feel that nothing's going to change, things aren't going to get any easier. How might you help those families see the strengths in their child when it feels so hard?
My first advice to parents is about self-care. And I can speak not only as a school principal, but also as a parent, and knowing that we have to take care of ourselves first, and not to put too much pressure on ourselves as parents. And I think it's important to know that homes are schools, and parents can be teachers as well as we move forward. So it's but we need to be forgiving to ourselves, and understanding that we can still be a great parent with a struggling teen. Like, that happens. I'll come across many parents. They'll have 3 or 4 children, and 3 have gone through the school, no concerns whatsoever, and the third student is showing maybe struggling either with the social emotional needs or some academic needs. So my message to the parents would be, to number one, to understand that there's silver linings in all our children. Their gifts, their strengths can be quite different. We just have to take the time and see what are those strengths, what are those gifts that our children have been given. Number two is to let them know, with parents, is to constantly work with a growth mindset, and to let the young people know that it isn't just that we're not just proud of them, but that they should be proud of themselves. And if we can empower young people to say, instead of saying, I'm proud of you, or you're doing great, or that's awesome, good job. And if our message is, you've worked very hard at this. You should be very proud of what you've done. You're developing a growth mindset in young people, and they can recognize that they can make the difference. And I think that connection between a family and a young person, by empowering the young person to say, I'm struggling now, but I think I can get better, or I'm struggling now, Mom, Dad, can you help me get better? And through that relationship, through that language, through that mindset, families can start, making some changes and starting to find, again, as I mentioned before, what is their definition of success? What is it that we'd like to achieve? But I think it has a lot to do, of course, my first line would be open communication with your young person.
Yes, and we find that we're focusing so much on all the things that are not going well because we want to make sure our kids are feeling successful. So I really
Yes.
appreciate you acknowledging that parents can be great parents even though their kids are struggling, because so often we wear that as it's our
We
fault in
do.
something we've done.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, we do, and it can be very heavy on us, and I think there's also the fact that our children aren't who we are. Like I grew up as an athlete, and I like to read, but it doesn't necessarily mean that my children are going to be athletic and that they would like to read. And I think that for me was a very humbling moment as a parent to know that that they have their own path and that we should be celebrating whichever path they've been given.
So
Or they
true.
choose. Yeah.
Yes, thank you
Yeah.
for that. So it can be really hard and challenging to support our kids when they're struggling with their mental health. Now, as parents, sharing with schools what is going on for our family or for our child, well, it can be really scary. We don't want to be judged. It's hard to share the whole story so that others understand what's going on for us at home and what it's like for us with our child. And the school doesn't always see what we see. So again, there comes that blame that we sometimes share with us. But what are some strategies that we can use to build a relationship between home and school where we may not
Mm,
have a relationship with the school yet, so that we can feel safe? You talk about that trust piece. It's hard to trust the
yeah.
school when maybe we haven't had experiences that made it easy to do that with our school. So what are some strategies you can share with us?
And thank you for bringing back the word trust, because I think that is the key to answering this question. Because I think if you can build trust, and we can build confidence in young people, and help them understand that they're wired. This is the way that you're wired. So be confident in who you are. Once you have trust and confidence, then we can move on to learning. I think it's important for parents to understand that schools are built in teams, and so understanding that you have various levels that you can approach at a school in order to support your child. And I would say that the first level would be making sure that you're in constant communication with the teacher, and getting to understand how the teachers what are the teacher's expectations and how that teacher likes to communicate. If there's a block there with the family around the teacher, which can happen at times, then you could also move into the support teams. So every school, well, in this school district, and many, of course, will have their counselors, their learning assistance teachers, any other supports maybe that have connections to the community. But you know that there's another level after the teacher. And of course, after that, you can go to your administration. So to make sure that parents know that there's various levels that you can go to, but I would always start with the teacher, because I feel as a principal, I'll always ask the parents, have you spoken to the teacher first? And that right
Mm-hmm.
there, because it's the teacher that's working with that child every day in the classroom, so they'll have more insight. The second thing that I would do is set up for regular dates of communication. So for example, as a parent, I will let the teachers know that I'd like to meet with them at the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, and then again at the end of the year. And sometimes this structure is already set up through the parent-teacher meeting. So I make sure that I attend those meetings, regardless of whether my child is successful or struggling in that course. It is about creating a relationship with the teacher, because as parents, we know our children very well. So can we offer insights to those teachers to help them understand maybe what's happening in the classroom? And I think the last one is, my last point would be to understand that schools have a different perspective than parents, and so that we have to as parents, we need to come in with an open mindset, willing to listen and willing to collaborate with that teacher and see how can we, because at the end of the day, how can we, find success? Because at the end of the day, this is about the child. And it is
Mhm.
about making sure that this child isn't only learning, but is developing a sense of confidence and a strong a sense of self-esteem. I think that's very important as our children go through the school system.
Thank you. And how important that is for us all to look at our common ground, which is that child in front of us. I
Yes.
appreciate that it is about all of us and putting some of our things aside that we might not understand or agree with, but how do we then focus on the child and what they need?
Yes, and understanding that schools are in constant movement.
Yeah.
The way that I taught is quite different to the way that teachers are teaching today. So it's understanding that it's the school systems are changing. You just take a look at
Yeah.
mathematics. The way that we're approaching mathematics is different to the way that when I taught in the 1990s. It's a little different.
Mm-hmm.
So just coming in with that open mindset, and that open spirit to learn, be flexible, always helps.
Thank you. I want to recognize that not all parents have this experience of leadership that
Mm.
supports kind of out of the box thinking or even building relationship with students. I know that there's been times where I didn't have the school working on my side, and it was a really challenging thing to do. What
Mhm.
do you suggest to those parents who have reached out for help but not gotten it from, or the staff don't see strengths in the child that's in front of them?
I think it's again, that will just come down to communication, because I often tell parents that they are um, that every child is a little different, and so the parents do know the children better than the teachers do, or an administrator. So what I seek to do is to learn also from the parents, but it's got to come in from a place of uh, of partnership. So partnering, so understanding that there's the student, the parent, and the teachers, the school, and working together, I think, is the key in all this, because because whatever happens in this, the language to the child has to be one of growth, and and it has to be a very positive message. So letting the child know that no matter what the struggles are, we can find a way to help you. We just haven't found it yet. And that's the concept of growth mindset. So I think it's very important to make sure that the parents understand that and I use the expression, no correction with no connection. So we have to make sure that if we're going to make any adjustments, that we have to make sure that we have a connection with the child, whether it's from the parent or from the school. But the child needs to know that they are not alone and that they belong somewhere, and hopefully they have a connection to the school. And if they don't
Mm-hmm.
have a connection to our school, then we have to do a better job of making sure that they know that they belong here.
Thank you. And yes, I hope that as parents always we can be patient with the process when it's not going the way we wish it would as quickly. But what I heard that we can do as parents, because we can't control always what the educators do, is that we can remind the child that we have their best interests at heart and that we're on their
Yes.
side and that we're going to find the way. It may not be found quickly and as we would like it to be, but it will be found, and we're here with you and working together to make sure that we have the best space for you to be in and belonging in.
Yeah, and that connection between home and school is very, and I'll often ask questions purely about sleep.
Mm-hmm.
I will talk to the parents quite a bit around you not, and I'll ask two questions. I'll ask them, what time does your child go to sleep, and what time does the child fall asleep? Because I think those are two different points. And so they may be going to their room at 10 o'clock, but only falling asleep at midnight. And so that connection again, it's as long as parents and schools are able to have conversations around the well-being of children. And
Mm-hmm.
sleep is key. Sleep in terms sleep is directly connected to learning. So and of course their attitudes when they come to school, because if you sleep
Mm-hmm.
well, you're less irritable. Hopefully.
Yeah.
So, but those rich conversations, and which can be
Yeah.
difficult at times, but they're very important.
Yes. for
Yeah.
both the children and for us as parents.
100%,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes. So, as parents and often educators, we feel we have to create consequences for disruptive behavior or rule breaking, all those things that make school a little more challenging for our kids. Now, we also understand that these are often the instances where we hear the tensions are highest between school and parents. If we come from a strength-based approach, what approaches would you use in school when they are being disruptive or break rules, and what would you want families to know?
Yeah, I think, misbehavior is connected to um, it's the key is to find out the root cause of that misbehavior. And so if that root cause is connected to a social emotional need, or if it's connected to some form of trauma, or if it's purely connected to some connection seeking behavior, sometimes it can even be connected to an avoidance of failure. It can also be a child that has not done well for so many years that the child has just had enough of not finding success, and they're starting to give up. And I think that's very important for us to understand the cause of what is causing this behavior. And once you figured out the cause, this is about teaching self-regulation skills, and it is about, once again, building the confidence in that child, because we'll often tell children that we understand that you're a good person. You just made a bad decision here. So that's very important that you understand we believe in you and that you belong here at this school. But I do think once we've identified the misbehavior, and we don't use the word punishment anymore in schools. It's the concept of a consequence. But this consequence has to be rich. It has to be a consequence that's going to help them understand that maybe this was a bad choice, but we're still believing in you, and you need to get stronger from this incident, because we have to allow young people, as do adults, to make mistakes. And the only time this can get tricky for us is if it's a pattern of behavior. If the child keeps on doing that same misbehavior over and over, then at that point, we may have to meet with the parents for more meetings, or bring in maybe either a medical support, or more community-based supports around supporting this child. But I think it is important for us to understand that each child is unique and they have different needs. And also, what comes up quite a bit in our world is trying to find their hobbies, and identifying, like, sometimes they miss the basketball tryouts, or they missed something in the school that could have kept them busy, or they're not in a club. So it's about making those adjustments for children. And I think it is important for schools to remain flexible, so that if a child missed a basketball tryout, can we still get that child onto the sport, or can we get him onto a community sport? But it is about effective communication, and those resolution skills, and understanding there's no point in punishing young adults, because they're wired to take risks. Their brain is telling them different things to do. I remember making bad choices as a young adolescent, and not necessarily knowing why I did it. But I think it is important
Yes.
for the adults, for us to guide them in the right direction. Said, you made a mistake. I'm going to put you back in the path. Let's do this together. And I think as long as we're doing it together, and we ask the question in schools, who are 3 adults who take care of you at the school? And it's very important that each child has, 2 to 3 adults, but somebody they can turn to when they need advice. And it's also important, I think, that trusted adult is chosen by the child and not by adults. And give them that agency, give them that power to say, who are the people that you connect with. And I think even as adults, we would appreciate that, of course, for us to be able to find our own path, choose our people.
How true. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. And I thank you for bringing up the whole adolescent brain.
Yes.
It's a different thing. And
Mhm.
as we as parents may not always understand the changes that we see going on with our children, to be aware that not always are the things they're doing. That big reminder that kids aren't giving us a hard time, they're having a hard time. So being
Mhm.
mindful of that, and developmentally, things don't always look the way we wish they would. And yes,
Yes.
to think back to what it was like when we were teenagers, I wish I could go back in time on some of those ones myself.
Mhm.
So if a child is struggling socially, emotionally, with their mental health, and those struggles show up in their academics and impact that, so not just their misbehavior that you spoke of, but they're academics and this is a harder time for them than could be. What are the options a school might offer to a family to help them through this so that they don't have to think it has to look a certain way in how they get through school?
Again, I think it comes back to understanding the teams in schools. And so if a child is struggling academically, is the conversation, and the teachers are your first line because the teachers are with the students all the time. So if a teacher does get uh, stuck or is really looking for options on how to support this child, we do have school-based teams in place, which is really a support team coming together. But parents can also look. So parents can also connect with our school counselors, our learning assistance teachers, our support teachers. So just again, parents also, the message would be know that you're not alone, and that within schools we have a series of teams to help. Within that support team, sometimes students can look to be designated, and um, a designation could be either around a learning issue that the child may have, or it could be around social emotional needs the child may have. So whatever the concern is, it's done through a psych ed assessment, which can be done through a school district or through a private organization. But what that will do, that will give a child another form of testing to see how they are wired, how their brains work, and also giving teachers a roadmap of how to help this child. For example, some of the suggestions that may come out of a designation may be to write tests in an alternate setting, or to write any form of assessment in a different space or in a quieter space. The adjustment may also have to do with where the child is seated in a classroom, who the child, in terms of peers, who the child is sitting with. So you have that option also to go through designations. A lot of schools also will run self-regulation and social skills training programs to help the child because connected to the academics, once we find the root cause of whatever that issue may be, it could be where the child is seated, or the way that a child learns could be very important as well. So all those skill sets will be very important. I've always been a really big fan of the work of Gordon Neufeld, and Gordon Neufeld speaks of making sure that peers are attached to other peers. So instead of adults always solving these problems, sometimes in the school setting we can ask a student, is there somebody in the classroom that you get along well with, that you connect with, that could maybe help you a little bit with some of the work, understanding that work. Again, we don't want other students to necessarily become tutors in the classroom, but it is a concept of peer support, and that connection, just the fact it's coming from a peer, can actually build confidence in students, letting them know that they're not much different and that there's other students and they will have that same language. And so we've had a lot of success with peers working with peers as well. And again, if it is academic, there are also parents can also look for peer tutoring within the community as well to get that extra help. But in general, I've found if they are struggling academically, it is, again, and I say this all the time to teachers as well, to parents, it is about listening to the child and taking the time to say, tell me, you seem to be struggling in this class. Tell me what is going on for you. And if we take the time to listen, sometimes what we find is pure, it's gold, in the sense that the child is giving us the pathway to solve this problem. And as adults, we just have to remember to listen.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge that not always are kids able to express what's going on for them because they don't have the words or the knowing. Do you have any suggestions around, I think patience for one, and we're just going to have to ask it more than once. I'm going to have to ask it many different ways.
Yes.
But knowing that children sometimes can't answer those questions because they don't know what the answer is.
Yes.
And
Yeah, that's very true, and that's about offering the child alternate options and how to communicate with us. And I've told many parents at times to write letters. to their parents or write letters to their teachers. Sometimes I've asked students to come in with some close friends to see if they could explain certain parts that I couldn't understand. And of course, I would never, ask one child to do that. I would ask a group of children to explain to me how they learn. And so
Mm-hmm.
that we're not just identifying the one child, and making sure that they feel confident and that they're not losing any form of self-esteem as we move forward. But I think it is important for us to use language that they can understand, and ask them also, is there another way for you to explain this to me? And I've had certain students where we've observed them learning in a PE class, and there were still hints. Like there was, and it really came down to the child. When the teacher spoke, the child didn't always listen or had problems listening. So we were giving them some skill sets about what to do to listen and how to support that listening. So the answers may come anywhere. It's really about us making sure that I've mentioned we listen, and that we're involving the child in their education. We're asking them to help us to go through. And as you mentioned, if the language isn't good, then yes, we have to make sure we give them alternate ways to explain it to us.
Curiosity, it's a wonderful thing.
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much. You've shared so many insights with us. Any last thoughts as we wrap up our time together that you want parents to know before we finish our time?
Well, my first message would, as I mentioned before, homes are schools, and parents are teachers. So make sure that within your school, within your home, that you're taking the time to listen. I mean, I'm a parent as well, so a lot of times I'm telling my children the direction they go and what I want them to do. And I think it is about trust. So whatever, instead of saying them, I would like you to take out the garbage, or I'd like you to do this skill set, I believe the language now is, I trust that you can take out the garbage. And again, within a time frame as well is very important. I trust that you can take out the garbage in about half an hour. I trust that you can start your assignment for school in around 20 minutes. And of course, sometimes they may negotiate. Can they have half an hour? I said, as long as we're building a trusting relationship. So I think that's really important. I think also it's the concept of the growth mindset, to know that all our children are wired differently. They may not be exactly the way we are, but they're beautiful in their differences. They're beautiful in the fact that they may communicate differently to us, or they may make different choices. And I think it's important for us to have that positive relationship, and know that just because they've made different choices, it doesn't mean that it's a problem for us as parents, because that we celebrate the direction that they go. And I think my last point would be, to parents, would be, as I mentioned earlier on, we need to be forgiving to ourselves, and to humanize ourselves as parents, and so that we know that. And give ourselves some time to breathe as well. And the language you use with children, as parents, educators, has to be rich in terms of building their confidence. So if we can do anything, for example, I tell this to teachers all the time, if we can do anything in the school system, if we can build students with resiliency and of course confidence, then we've done something in the school system.
Thank you. I think we've got a moment that I can ask you this question. We'll see what happens.
Sure.
That if you were to share one example that you think back to, and what a success that was for you, and something that was super hard. You shared a number of stories with us. Guitars come to mind. I'm wondering if you can share an example of something you're really proud of how you and the parents and the young person came up to a solution for a hard problem.
Yeah, it was a young person who really didn't want to, wasn't really participating in the classes, didn't want to get engaged at all. And I said, well, what are some things that you do like? And the student was like, I don't know, I don't like anything. But the student did see the guitar in my office, and the student's like, well, I like music. And I said, well, how about you and I? How about if when you come to school, I'll start working on some chords with you and giving you that piece. And of course, I didn't make it a deal. Like, I didn't give the child an ultimatum. It was just a question of being kind and build, again, once again, building that trust with the child. So when the student came in, we started learning chords. It wasn't, you learn chords and then you have to do this amount of work. It was more about building the relationship with the child. And as we built up with chords, our conversations became a little bit more rich, and we started talking about what was going on at the school. And from there, the conversation moved to the fact that, that at the end of the year, in order to move on to grade 8, what are some things you're going to need? And that child, came up with the plan of saying, well, Mr. Ragoonaden, maybe I do need to start working a little bit more in that classroom. I mean, as a principal, it meant that I was still working with this child and teaching guitars, and I had other teachers involved with this as well. But I think what was important in this entire story is that we came up with this plan together. It wasn't a plan that I came up with that said, as an educator, this is what I'm up to. It wasn't a plan that the child came up with. We built it together, a plan around maybe doing a little bit more work at school and starting to get the assignments and the assessments completed. And again, relationships take time. Healing takes time. And of course, trust is something that needs to be built and earned, and that's done through a positive relationship. But it's amazing what, for this child, it was music. For other children, sometimes it's books. Sometimes I have children that don't want to read. So we went out and we got little small NBA books on LeBron James and some other basketball icons, and we encourage young boys to start reading things that they would like to read. And that's the concept of agency, like listening to their strengths. What is it they want to do? And adults building those flexible systems for young people so that they can find success.
And what a great way to conclude. Thank you so much for your time, for your insight, Ashley. You're so appreciated. And to what is possible. Thank you to our partners and our funders who allow us to create these resources for you. And thank you to you, our participants. I've witnessed the care and things that people do to try and work through those hard moments to create better outcomes for our children and youth. So thank you on behalf of your kids for showing your strength by being here with us today and learning other ways that you may be able to support them so that they have better mental health outcomes too. It's a beautiful strength. Take care.